Good morning. So today I have Amlan with us, who is a dynamic driven engineering leader with vast experience when it comes to architecture and design of enterprise and SaaS software. He has experience in creating highly available, highly performance, and dynamically scalable system architecture, which is something that's very important for the efficiency and productivity of wherever he's working. Let's welcome Amlan on 10 Minutes of Hiring Wisdom, where he will tell us about where he's currently working, where the company he's working at, most of us know about it already, just because it's a very well-known company, especially if we don't drive. Let's welcome Amlan. Hi, Amlan. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I am doing well. Thank you so much for joining us, Amlan. So, Amlan, can you tell us about where you work and what your role is within the company?
Sure. I am a senior engineering leader at Uber. And Uber, as you all know, started as a ride sharing company and eventually morphed into many different fields, some very well known, like Uber Eats, and some not so well known, like Uber Freights and Uber groceries and things of that nature. And now they're getting into even more very interesting fields that you will hear in days to come.
Okay, we're excited to hear about that. But Amlan, just curious, how did you end up with Uber? Like, where were you working before that, and how
Oh,
was your
okay.
journey like to Uber?
Sure. Yeah, before this, I was at Salesforce, and before that, I was at a startup. And of course, before that, I was at SAP for many years. But given I have joined Uber about 7 weeks ago, honestly. I'm not a very veteran of it yet. But it has a very interesting culture. Their interviews is where your interaction with the company starts. And in the interview itself, I mean, you kind of get to see that one thing they don't do is absolutely do not go down on any compromise on quality of candidates, and you will feel that as you get interviewed here. The kind of questions they ask, the interactions that you have, and the passion that you pretty easily see in the people is absolutely fantastic.
Okay. My next question would be that usually, from what I've read, from what I've seen, a lot of companies specifically nitpick on different traits of candidates. And then they're like, oh, we don't have any people that we could hire. So I understand that they do not want to compromise on the quality of candidates, but where is the fine line between not compromising on the quality and giving up a good enough candidate just for the sake because they think that he's not perfect for the role? Can you maybe specify a little more on that?
Sure. Let me take about 30 seconds to illustrate what they are looking for. Essentially, companies like Uber or Facebook or LinkedIn or Google or the people who are the TRA companies, so to speak, in the tech world, essentially what they are trying to do is gather a set of people who are passionate about technology, who are essentially self-motivated learners, and very interested in pushing the boundaries. And it's very easy to say, but it is very hard to get, as you know. It's not that everybody who is not getting in to any one of these companies are bad programmers or bad engineers. That is absolutely not true. But here, the way people are evaluated is slightly different. There is of course, there is a coding portion if you are an engineer or if you want to code or so on. But on top of that, there are a set of values like how collaboration, citizenship, how do you reach out to others, how do you coordinate things, and that sort of skills also matter quite a bit. And those sort of things, when you evaluate, mostly it is behavioral interview. So and not so much about give me a situation, but these are situational questions. And if you have had experience in those sort of areas, please illustrate them, even if you think that it doesn't exactly match. what they're asking, but tell them that, sorry, I don't have an exact match of what you were asking for, but here is something perhaps you will find, closer to something like that you were asking. So when you present it that way, they know that, okay, I mean, everybody doesn't have every experience, right? So you can always find out that, okay, so at least this guy is trying to tell me something similar so that I can get some signals out of it. That's one thing. And second thing is that in terms of technical questions, or in terms of designing questions, or system design questions and things like that, keep an open mind. I mean, don't think that the solution you come out with has to be absolutely perfect 100%. It doesn't. No one is looking for a system that you are designing on a board in 45 minutes is going to be deployed in production. It's very rare that it happens, but they're simply trying to see how you think, and that's really it. And be communicative with the person that you are talking to, and ask them enough questions, ask them clarification of questions, scale limits, boundaries, constraints, if there are any, and all sorts of things, and then come up with what comes to your mind. And that's essentially, they're trying to know you, and that's really it.
Okay, I love the elaborative process, but can you maybe specify regarding how many rounds of interviews there are? For instance, you work for the engineering department, so you'd have a better idea of that. So, how many rounds are there in the interview, and how exactly does the process go like?
Sure. It depends. There is a guideline. We are not required to follow the guideline to the T. So we can change the process if the hiring manager feels the need to. Typically, the process starts with a recruiting coordinator reaching out to the candidate and essentially getting his information, the immigration information, the regular stuff that we collect about people. And after that, if that goes well, they talk about the role, and what the candidate is about. And if both of them there is interest, then they move it to the recruiter. And the recruiter could sometimes speak to the candidate first before giving it to the hiring manager, or they could set up a phone screen with the hiring manager, or any person that hiring manager nominates to stand in for them. Sometimes it does happen because of conflicts. um, Once you And that is typically a technical phone screen, so they will probably not ask you to code on that, but they might ask you to design some simple stuff on the screen or so on. We use code lab as the online whiteboard, or whatever nowadays we have to use, because everybody's working from home. And also, once that goes well, and the hiring manager feels, or whoever is talking to you feels, that you are interested, and there is a mutual interest, then we invite you for an on-site round. Although we still call it on-site, it's really not on-site. It's actually done over Zoom, and it can be broken up. It's typically about 5 to 6 people, and the way it works is that generally there are one or two coding rounds. The one coding round will be, unsolved problem, which is essentially problems that we will tell you to solve. And that's what is the typical coding round, as it is known in the interview in tech world. And the second one is generally about a coding round ish thing, where you will be designing a deep design in terms of system design, and maybe there is some code related to that, or essentially a very deep dive into some system design question. Then there are one or two other system design rounds, and one or two more, depending on the role. If it is a senior enough role, there are usually what we call level 5B or 6, that sort of role. Then it is generally, there are two behavioral interview questions. One of them is for citizenship and collaboration. Another one could be for management, or situational awareness, or things of that nature. All of these will be sent to you in terms of what are the things that they're looking for, what sort of example questions, example answers, and well, I'm not sure if it was example answers, but at least they send you example questions for sure. And then so that you have an idea as to what the person is looking for, what are they going to evaluate you on, and that sort of thing. There are tons and tons of interview soft skills, behavioral interview videos on YouTube, which has helped me personally, I think, while appearing for this sort of things. But uh, I'm sure you can look those up, or there are many different tutorials online as well. The coding questions are not so much lead code questions anymore. They are essentially internally created set of questions which keep changing, so it is hard to find those questions exactly. But and don't try to do that. Essentially, read up on your brush up on your basic. They're not going to ask you something out of the world. I mean, they will ask you basic algorithms, basic computer science data structure questions. And if you understand what is dynamic programming, if you understand recursion, if you understand search, DFS, BFS, that sort of stuff, you should be fine. I mean, there should be no issues with any of that.
Okay, well, thank you so much for sharing the whole elaborative process. It sounds definitely like why Uber is so into finding the right candidates, because at the end of the day, they want someone who is the right fit for the company in terms of culture, in terms of the purpose, and in terms of technical skills. Because at the end of the day, they do want the whole package, and it makes sense because a great company like Uber should not compromise on candidates. The last question for you, Amlan, would be what is one piece of advice that you would think a lot of candidates should know about that would drive them towards success based on your experience?
In my experience, whether it is at Uber or at Salesforce, one of the things I have noticed is that majority of the candidates that gets rejected are the ones that haven't prepared. If you are trying to negotiate an interview like at Uber or Salesforce or Google or Facebook, you have to prepare. Take the time. Put a gap between when you talk to the recruiter and when you do the interview, the on-site round. Take a few weeks and actually prepare. Because if you don't prepare, and this is mostly for people who have worked for a while. For the straight out of school college kids, it's probably not that big of a deal because they're coding constantly, and they have everything in their mind. But majority of the people who are a little more senior, for them, take some time to prepare. Don't stress out about it. Try to enjoy the interview. These are Is it a hard interview? Yes, but you will feel good as you negotiate these questions. And these are questions you won't find on LitCode, you won't find on standard HackerRank or anywhere else. But it's not about whether you can solve them correctly, within 30 minutes or not. It's about how you go about solving them. Majority of the people we hire haven't been able to solve the entire problem, but they get to 80%, they get to 90% of it, which is good enough for us to get the signals that okay, so this guy knows what he's doing. So that's what I mean, that don't freak out if you can't immediately know the exact answer to the whole question. But essentially, give it your best, give it your thoughts, and enjoy the process.
Okay. Well, it sounds interesting because usually I think when you're not able to finish something 100%, you're just like, okay, I'm not going to be chosen. So there's a loss of hope. And then when you're actually supposed to be doing it, that demotivation just prevents you from doing further any good. So it's definitely interesting because 80% is well enough and good enough to make sure that Uber knows that, okay, this candidate stands out. But thank you so much, Amlan, for sharing this wonderful process about your company. And considering you just started, you seem to know the ins and outs of the company itself. So all the best for your future, for the job at Uber, and I hope you continue. I wish you all the further success. But thank you so much for coming on the show and for sharing about your insight.
Thank you
It was
for
an
having
absolute
me.
pleasure.